They thought I was dead, so they split the money without me. I stood in the shadows across the street, my hands buried deep in the pockets of a worn jacket the fisherman had given me. My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at what used to be my home, the house I had grown up in, the house where my mother read bedtime stories, where my father taught me how to ride a bike. Now it stood there, different, repainted, with a strange car in the driveway and curtains I didn't recognize. The porch light flickered as if mocking me. I felt like a ghost haunting my own past, invisible to the world I once knew. 3 years. 3 years since the storm, since the shipwreck, since I was swallowed by the Atlantic and spat out onto a scrap of rock that barely passed for an island. I remember the way the waves towered above us that night, the roar of the wind, the cold that sank into my bones as the sea tore our vessel apart. I should have died. I almost did. For weeks, maybe months, I lost track of time. I fought to survive on that island. My beard grew wild, my skin burned and peeled under the relentless sun. I built a shelter from driftwood and leaves. I learned how to fish with sharpened sticks and fashioned traps for birds. At night, I lay on the sand, staring at the stars, wondering if anyone was looking up at the same sky, missing me. But no one came. No rescue boats, no planes. Until one morning, when I saw the silhouette of a fishing boat on the horizon. I thought I was imagining it at first, a cruel trick of the mind. But it drew closer, and when the fishermen pulled me aboard, their faces were a mix of shock and pity. I must have looked like a madman, ragged, half-starved, my eyes wild from isolation. They took me to the mainland. I could barely speak at first, my throat raw, my mind fogged. When I finally told them my name, they exchanged uneasy glances. "Nathan Grant?" one of them asked, scratching his grizzled chin. "But they said you died years ago." And that's when I realized the world had given up on me. I spent weeks recovering, gaining strength, growing accustomed to the sound of voices and the feel of a real bed beneath me. And then I came home. Or at least, I tried. But as I stood there now, on that familiar street that suddenly felt like a foreign country, I saw how much had changed. The family business, Grant and Company, Woodworks, had a new sign. It didn't say Grant and Company anymore. It said, Trevor Grant Designs. Trevor, my brother, the one who always played second fiddle, the one who envied my place at our father's side. I felt the bitterness rise in my throat as I took it all in. The shop windows gleamed, the logo modern and sleek. My brother's name in bold letters where ours used to be side by side. And my house, no, not my house anymore. The yard was trimmed to perfection. Flower beds I'd never seen before lined the walkway. It was someone else's home now, someone else's life. I stayed in the shadows as a couple emerged from the front door, laughing, keys jingling in their hands. They climbed into the shiny SUV parked in the driveway and drove away, leaving behind a place that no longer belonged to me. I felt like I was sinking again, like the ocean had opened beneath my feet. Was this what they'd done? Moved on so easily? Sold everything, changed everything, as if I had never existed. I took a deep breath, the cool evening air filling my lungs. My reflection stared back at me from the shop window across the street, a gaunt, sunburned man with a scar above his right brow, hair too long, beard too thick, wearing clothes that didn't fit right. I hardly recognized myself. No wonder no one else would. But I was here. I was alive. And I wanted answers. I turned and walked down the street, my boots thudding softly against the pavement, each step bringing me closer to the truth I wasn't sure I was ready for. Tomorrow, I would knock on my brother's door. Tomorrow, I would face the family that buried an empty coffin and divided my world without me. And tomorrow, they would see that I was no ghost. I didn't sleep that night. I spent it wandering the streets I thought I knew, each one lined with memories that felt more like shadows now. By morning, I stood at the iron gate of a house that used to be ours, the house I had imagined returning to 1,000 times during those long, lonely nights on the island. But as I stared at it now, it felt as foreign as the island had. The house was bigger than I remembered, expanded and modernized. The old porch was gone, replaced by sleek columns and polished wood. Fresh paint gleamed in the morning sun, and tall windows reflected the world back at me. The garden out front was immaculate, trimmed hedges, bright flowers arranged with precision. A stranger's home wearing my family's name. I rang the bell. A long pause. Then the door opened. There he was. Trevor. He filled the doorway, tall, broader than I remembered, dressed in a dark tailored suit like he had just stepped out of some business magazine. His hair was perfectly styled, and he smelled faintly of expensive cologne. For a moment his face went pale, like he'd seen a ghost. His eyes, the same shade of gray as mine, widened in disbelief. "And Nathan?" he stammered. I watched the flicker of terror in his gaze before he masked it with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "My God, it's really you," he said, forcing a laugh. "I can't believe it. Come in, come in." He stepped aside, gesturing for me to enter. The inside was just as unrecognizable as the outside. The house had been gutted and redesigned, open spaces, marble floors, modern furniture that looked too expensive to sit on. The warmth, the charm of the old place was gone. I took it all in silently. Trevor clapped a hand on my shoulder, and I felt how awkward it was, how unnatural. "Sit, please. Let me get you something. Coffee? Water? Are you hungry?" "I'm fine," I said quietly, my eyes scanning the room. Footsteps echoed from the hallway, and then she appeared. "Julia." She froze when she saw me, her breath catching in her throat. She held a small boy about 2 years old, with Trevor's dark hair and her green eyes. For a moment, none of us spoke. "Julia," I said, my voice rough. "Nathan," she whispered. The boy squirmed in her arms, sensing the tension. She shifted him on her hip, her knuckles white where they gripped his little body. Trevor broke the silence with nervous energy. "Look at this, the whole family back together. It's a miracle. We thought you were gone forever." His words felt rehearsed, like he'd practiced them in front of a mirror. "I bet you did," I said, unable to hide the edge in my voice. Trevor cleared his throat, his smile faltering. "Listen, Nate, this is unbelievable. I don't even know what to say, but you're home now, that's all that matters. We'll figure everything out." I didn't answer. I kept looking at Julia. The way she avoided my eyes spoke volumes. The ring on her finger, Trevor's ring, seemed to weigh her hand down. Suddenly, I heard hurried footsteps. "Nathan! Nathan!" It was Mom. She rushed into the room, and before I could react, she threw her arms around me. Her tears soaked my shirt as she sobbed against my chest. "My boy, my sweet boy. I prayed for this day. Thank God, thank God." Her embrace was real. No mask, no pretense. I held her tightly, and for the first time since I'd set foot back in this town, I felt like I was truly home. Behind her came Lily, my little sister, though she wasn't so little anymore. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed as if she'd been crying long before I arrived. She stood back, hesitating. "Hi, Lil," I said softly. She swallowed hard, then crossed the room and hugged me quickly, as if afraid of what the contact might mean. "I'm so glad you're okay," she said, but her voice trembled. We all stood there, the strangest kind of family reunion. Trevor clapped his hands together, breaking the spell. "Well, this calls for a celebration, doesn't it? Nathan, you'll stay here, of course. You need rest, and we have plenty of room." I stared at him, seeing right through the grin plastered on his face. Plenty of room. In what used to be my home. I nodded slowly. "Sure, Trevor, I'll stay. We have a lot to catch up on." His smile froze for just a second, just long enough for me to know he understood what I meant. That night, as I lay awake in a guest room that didn't feel like mine, I stared out at the garden where Julia and I once planned our future. And I wondered how much of it Trevor had stolen, piece by piece, while I was gone. Tomorrow, I would start getting it back. Dinner at Trevor's house felt like dining in a stranger's mansion. The table was familiar, the same old oak table our father had built with his own hands, but everything else felt wrong. The walls were adorned with modern art that didn't belong. The chandelier above us threw cold light on faces I used to know, faces that now seemed carved from stone. Trevor sat at the head of the table, carving a roast with performative precision. His suit jacket was gone, sleeves rolled up just so, as if to show how at home he was. Julia sat to his right, silent, focused on cutting food into small pieces for the boy beside her. I couldn't bring myself to look at the child too long. Lily sat across from me, quiet, picking at her food. Mom tried her best, smiling through tears every time she looked my way, as if reminding herself that I was really here. "So," Trevor said finally, breaking the silence that had dragged on too long. "Tell us about everything. Where have you been all this time? How did you survive?" I took a sip of water, feeling the weight of every eye on me. Shipwreck, washed up on a small island, fished, built shelter, waited. I got lucky when a fishing boat came by." "Lucky," Trevor echoed, nodding thoughtfully. "You always did have good luck, Nate." "Not always," I said, holding his gaze. "Seems like I missed out on a lot while I was gone." Trevor leaned back, forcing a casual laugh. "We all thought you were gone, brother. We mourned you. We had to move on. It wasn't easy for any of us." "I can see that," I said, my eyes scanning the room. "The house looks different." Trevor cleared his throat. "Yes, well, after we thought we'd lost you, it became too hard for Mom to stay. We decided to sell the old place, pay off some debts, settle things. Julia and I bought this place. It was a fresh start." "Debts?" I asked quietly. He nodded, his expression turning solemn, like he was delivering bad news with a heavy heart. "The business had some outstanding loans. We needed to cover funeral costs, legal fees. You know how it goes." I didn't know any of it. "And the business?" Trevor set down his fork. "I kept it running, rebranded it, made it modern. Grant & Company wasn't sustainable anymore. We needed to adapt. It's just Trevor Grant Designs now. Easier that way. One name, one vision. But don't worry, I've kept the spirit of it alive." The words made my skin crawl. He'd erased me from our father's legacy as easily as changing a sign. Mom reached across the table, placing her hand over mine. "Your brother saved us, Nathan. You should be proud. He held everything together when we were falling apart." I forced a smile for her sake, but it felt brittle. Julia still hadn't looked at me. She helped the boy with his food, her movements mechanical, as if she were somewhere else entirely. "And you, Lily?" I asked gently. "How have you been?" She flinched at the question, glancing at Trevor before answering. I tried investing my share after we sold the house," she said, her voice low. "Trevor gave me advice. It didn't work out." Trevor's smile tightened, just for a moment. "Lily's heart was in the right place," he said quickly. "These things happen. Bad luck, bad timing. But we're family. We support each other." I let the silence hang heavy. The clink of cutlery on plates sounded louder than it should have. I thought of all the dinners we'd had at this table when we were kids. Dad at the head, telling stories about the shop. Mom laughing. Trevor sulking when I got praised. Lily giggling at our fights. Julia coming over, still just a neighbor's daughter back then, glowing with dreams. Now it felt like those memories belonged to someone else. "I'm glad you kept the table," I said, running my hand over the wood. Trevor grinned. "Some things are too good to replace." The irony was suffocating. After dinner, as everyone began to clear plates, Lily brushed past me and whispered, "We need to talk. Later." Her eyes met mine, filled with regret. Maybe fear. Maybe both. Trevor clapped me on the back as if we were best friends reunited. "Get some rest tonight, Nate. Tomorrow, we'll figure out what's next. We're a team now." A team. I nodded, but inside, I was already planning. Because this wasn't over, not by a long shot. The next morning, I left Trevor's house early. I didn't want another awkward breakfast filled with tight smiles and forced pleasantries. I needed answers, and I knew exactly where to start. Mr. Carter's office was tucked away on the second floor of an old brick building downtown, above a barber shop that hadn't changed since I was a boy. I climbed the creaky wooden stairs, each step groaning under my weight like it resented being disturbed. The office door was half open. The faded letters on the frosted glass still read, "Carter and Associates, Family Law." Inside, nothing had changed. The same heavy oak desk, the same overstuffed bookshelves, the same smell of dust and old paper. The sunlight streamed through grimy windows, catching dust motes in the air like tiny ghosts. Mr. Carter looked up as I stepped in. His face, more lined than I remembered, went pale. "Nathan," he said, rising slowly from his chair, his voice trembling. "Is it really you?" I managed a small smile. "It's me, sir." He came around the desk and gripped my hand in both of his eyes misting. "Dear God, we thought you were gone. We grieve for you, son." "I know," I said gently. "That's why I'm here. I need to understand what happened, why I was declared dead, why everything was divided up so quickly." Carter nodded, motioning for me to sit. He lowered himself into his chair with a groan, folding his hands on the desk. "It was your brother," he said quietly. Trevor pushed for it. After a few months with no news, no body, he insisted we act, said the family needed closure. "Your mother." She was too heartbroken to argue. Lily didn't know what to think, but Trevor, he wanted it done. "No evidence?" No proof I was gone for good? Carter shook his head slowly. None. I advised waiting. I said we should be cautious. But Trevor brought in experts, people who claimed the wreckage and currents meant survival was impossible. He was persuasive. Determined, I leaned forward, my hands clenched. Was there anything at all that suggested I might be alive? The old man hesitated. His gaze drifted to a filing cabinet in the corner, dented and scarred from decades of use. There was something, he admitted. About a year after you disappeared, an envelope arrived. No return address. Inside was a letter, unsigned, claiming you'd been seen, and a photograph. My heart slammed against my ribs. A photograph? Carter rose and shuffled to the cabinet. He opened a drawer with a metallic screech and rifled through thick folders, muttering to himself. Finally, he drew out a battered file and brought it to the desk. I kept it, he said. Against instructions. Trevor told me to destroy it, said it was a cruel hoax, that it would only hurt your mother more. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. With trembling fingers, he opened the file and slid a worn photograph across to me. There I was, skinny, bearded, filthy, standing at the edge of a jungle clearing, staring into the camera like a man seeing a ghost. Behind me, thick tropical foliage framed the shot, unmistakably real. And in the corner of the photo, a date scrawled in ink, 1 year after I'd been declared dead. I stared at it, my throat dry, emotions churning. Where did this come from? Carter shook his head. No clue. The postmark was smudged. Could have come from anywhere along the coast. But someone knew. Someone saw you and tried to tell us. And Trevor buried it. Carter hesitated. He said it was fake. Said desperate people send this kind of thing all the time. I argued, but he was adamant. Said it would tear your mother apart. He made me promise. The room seemed to close in on me. I slid the photo back into the file and took a deep breath. May I keep this? Carter nodded. It's yours. I'm sorry, Nathan. I wish I'd done more. I should have. I rose, gripping his hand again. You did enough. You kept it safe. That matters. As I left the office, the photo tucked inside my jacket, I felt the first flicker of clarity. Trevor had known. He'd seen the proof, and he'd chosen to hide it. This wasn't just grief. This wasn't just bad decisions. This was betrayal. And I was done playing the ghost. That evening, the house felt heavier than ever. The walls seemed to press in, and every corner of Trevor's mansion whispered of things lost, things stolen. I waited until the house had quieted down, until the clatter of dishes had faded, until the soft murmur of the television in the next room went silent. Then I found Lily. She was sitting alone in the den, staring out the window at the dark garden beyond. Her shoulders were hunched, her hands twisted together in her lap. Lily, I said gently. She flinched at my voice but didn't turn. We need to talk. She drew in a shaky breath. I know. I came around and sat beside her, close enough that she could feel I wasn't angry, just desperate for the truth. I saw it, Nathan, she whispered. The letter, the photo. I saw it the day it came. My heart sank. Why didn't you say anything? Tears welled in her eyes. Trevor told me it was fake, that someone was playing a cruel joke, that if we showed it to Mom it would break her. She wasn't strong enough, he said. I believed him. I swallowed hard. Did you really? Her voice broke. I wanted to believe him because it was easier, because the thought of hoping and then losing you again, I couldn't bear it. And Trevor, he sounded so sure. I closed my eyes for a moment, breathing through the mix of grief and fury. It wasn't your fault, Lil, I said softly. You were trying to protect Mom. I get that. But he knew. He knew exactly what he was doing. She nodded, tears streaming down her face now. I'm so sorry, Nathan. I squeezed her hand. It's not me you owe an apology to. It's yourself, and maybe Mom. We'll figure it out. She broke down then, sobbing quietly, and I sat with her until the tears ran dry. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. The guest room felt like a cell, the kind that kept ghosts locked in. So I did what I'd done 1,000 times in my dreams. During those long nights stranded on the island, I went out to the old veranda. It was different now, polished, decorated with planters and new railings, but if I closed my eyes I could almost hear our laughter from years ago. Julia and I, planning a future that never came. And then she was there, stepping softly into the night, wrapped in a thin robe. I thought you might be out here, she said. I didn't answer at first. The moonlight caught her face, and for a second, she looked like the girl I used to know. You couldn't sleep either? I asked. Finally, she shook her head, moving to stand beside me. Nathan, I need to tell you something. I can't keep it in anymore. I waited, watching her hands tremble as she gripped the railing. Trevor knew. He knew you were alive. I didn't move, didn't speak. Just let her keep going. He showed me the letter, the photo, but he said it was dangerous, that whoever sent it was trying to trick us, maybe even lure us into something terrible. He said if we clung to false hope, it would destroy the family. And then he said the best way to protect everyone, to keep your mother from falling apart, was for us to marry, to give her something to hold on to. Her voice broke on the last word. He told me it was what you would have wanted, that I needed to help him keep the family together. I felt as if the ground had shifted beneath me. And you believed him? She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I was grieving, lost, and he was so convincing, and when I started to doubt, when I said I wanted to wait to be sure, he made me feel selfish, like I was putting my own fear ahead of your mother's happiness. And now? Her voice dropped to a whisper. Now I see what he did. He played us both. He wanted you gone, and when you weren't, he buried the truth. He wanted the business, the house, me. I turned to look at her, seeing not just guilt, but terror. Are you afraid of him? I asked. She hesitated, then nodded. Yes, not that he'll hurt me, but the way he controls everything, the way he looks at me like I'm just another thing he owns. I feel trapped, Nathan. For the first time since I'd come back, I reached out and took her hand. You're not trapped anymore, I said. Not if I can help it. She squeezed my hand back, desperate for something real. And together we stood there, silent under the moon, two people who'd lost their way, but maybe, just maybe, had found a path back. By the next morning, the decision was made. I wasn't going to waste another day hoping Trevor would do the right thing. He'd had 3 years for that, and he'd chosen betrayal at every turn. I sat in the office of a lawyer I'd known in passing before the storm took me from this town. Mr. Ellis, a sharp-eyed man with a reputation for getting things done. He listened in silence as I told him the story, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. When I finished, he let out a long breath. You have a case, Nathan, a strong one. The photo, the letter, the testimony from Carter, from your sister, from Julia, it all paints a picture. And now that you're alive, no court in this state will let Trevor keep what's yours. Good, I said. Then let's start. Ellis nodded, already pulling files, jotting notes. You'll need to be ready for him to fight dirty. He won't give this up easily. I smiled grimly. I'm counting on it. News spreads fast in a small town. By the time I left Ellis's office, people were already whispering. I walked through the town square, past shops where I'd once been greeted with warm hellos. Now I got double takes, wide eyes, hushed voices. That's him, I heard one woman murmur. Nathan Grant, the one who came back from the dead. Did you hear? His brother took everything. And now he's suing to get it back. Part of me hated the attention. But another part, the part that had lived invisible on that island for so long, felt vindicated. Let them talk. Let the truth come out. Trevor didn't disappoint. Within days, he launched his counterattack. Rumors began to circulate that I'd staged my disappearance, that I'd done it for insurance money, that I'd abandoned my family on purpose, and now I'd returned only because the money ran out. Ellis showed me affidavits Trevor had gathered. People who claimed they'd seen me boarding a boat in another town heard me talking about leaving it all behind. Lies. All of it. But lies dressed up in legal paper still made a mess. He's trying to bury you under doubt, Ellis said. Typical move. We'll counter it. Just be ready. I was ready. Julia was ready too. One afternoon, she appeared at the law office, pale but determined. I filed the papers today, she said. I blinked. Divorce? She nodded. I can't keep pretending, not after everything. He tricked me, Nathan, into marrying him, into staying with him. I won't let him do it anymore. There was a strength in her I hadn't seen for years, and I felt a strange mix of sorrow and pride. You're brave, Julia, I said softly. No braver than you, she replied. And Lily, sweet, uncertain Lily, found her courage too. The town paper ran an interview with her. She spoke of the letter, the photo, the truth she'd hidden out of fear and regret. She spoke of my right to my place, my name, my legacy. And the tide began to turn. People stopped looking at me like a curiosity, a ghost come back to haunt them. They started seeing me as what I was, a man wronged, a man fighting to reclaim what was his. At night, I'd walk the town square, watch the lights flicker in shop windows, listen to the quiet hum of life returning to normal. And I'd remind myself this wasn't about revenge. It was about setting things right. And I was almost there. The courtroom felt colder than I expected. Pale sunlight slanted through tall windows, casting long bars of light across polished wood and stone. The judge, gray-haired and severe, peered down over his glasses as if he'd seen too many family feuds in his time. Trevor sat at his table, jaw tight, his expensive suit unable to hide the sweat at his brow. His lawyer whispered urgently in his ear, but Trevor didn't respond. He just stared at the judge, waiting for the blow he must have known was coming. I sat still, my hands folded in my lap, listening as the judge read his decision. "Nathan Grant," he said, his voice steady, final, "is the rightful heir to his father's estate, business interests, and property. The court finds that the declaration of death was made on insufficient evidence and that material facts were withheld that could have prevented this error. Therefore, all assets shall be restored or compensated accordingly." The words echoed in the quiet chamber. Additionally, the judge continued, "Mr. Trevor Grant is ordered to provide restitution for profits gained during this period and to relinquish all contested holdings." There it was. Justice. I let out a slow breath, the tension of years finally beginning to loosen. Trevor didn't look at me. He gathered his papers, his movements stiff and robotic. When the judge dismissed us, he rose and walked out of the courtroom without a word, his head low, shoulders hunched. I watched him go, not with satisfaction, but with a strange, quiet relief. It was over. The house took months to restore. The new paint came off, the modern fixtures replaced with the warm, familiar touches that once made it a home. The porch creaked again when you stepped onto it. The garden grew wild in places, just as I liked it. That evening I sat on the porch steps, the wood warm under me, watching the sun sink below the horizon. The sky was ablaze with color, gold, pink, deep violet. Mom joined me, easing herself down beside me with a soft sigh. She looked at the house, at the land, at me. "I'm proud of you," she said quietly. "You didn't let the anger take you. You could have, after everything, but you didn't." I smiled, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "I was angry," I admitted. "Maybe I still am, a little, but I kept thinking, what would Dad have done? He wouldn't have let this family tear itself apart over money, and neither will I." She rested her head against me. "You brought us back together," she said. "That's worth more than all of this." Trevor left town not long after the ruling. Word was, he sold what he could and slipped away in the night, too ashamed to face the people he'd once tried to impress. I didn't hate him. I pitied him. A man who had everything he wanted and lost it all because he could never be content. Julia visited sometimes. We talked on the porch, like old friends. She was freer now, lighter, like a weight had been lifted. "I'm sorry, Nathan," she said once, watching the garden bloom in the spring sun. "I know," I said, "and I forgave you a long time ago." There was peace in that. We didn't fall back into what we'd been. Too much had happened. But there was a quiet understanding between us now, and that was enough. As the sun dipped below the hills and the first stars appeared in the evening sky, I sat in the place that had always been mine, in the home that would always be ours, and I thought about everything I'd lost and everything I'd found again. Money fades, titles change, but truth endures. And in the end, that was the real inheritance.